France. We all know about France, don't we? They have long bread, long landmarks like the Eiffel Tower, long affairs, ashtrays full of cigarette butts, films with nudity in, and they really love generalisations based on absolutely nothing. I've been 3 whole times, so I'm like the expert on France. I mean, going to Disneyland twice counts, doesn't it? But yes, this is a film that doesn't feature nudity, which is good, because it's called The City of Lost Children. Now, you don't want nudity in something with the name of City of Lost Children, do you? Unless you like being on a register. Even the adults in the movie wouldn't look great nude. I mean, one of them is Ron Perlman. Who wants to see Ron Perlman nude? Apart from Ron Perlman's wife, I guess. City of Lost Children was a 1995 film directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet and Jeunet Caro, a pair who collaborated on such internationally regarded classics as Delicatessen, Amélie, A Very Long Engagement, and Alien Resurrection. Yeah. A steampunk-styled science fiction film finds a nasty scientist called Crank, who uses technology to siphon the dreams out of children to reverse the ageing process. Oh, if that's all you do, I'll get my laptop out when my son's asleep. I need to reverse the amount of hair going down the plug hole. He doesn't need dreams anyway. These children are snatched by a cyborg cult who get upgrades from Dr. Dreamsnatcher in exchange for metal add-ons to their eyes and whatnot. We follow a cute orphaned junior called Miette as she teams up with a crew of outcasts to bring down the sea-based Crank and his selfish REM ruining ways. City of Lost Children was a visually arresting effort and now a beloved cult classic, but while it did alright in France, it did not do well internationally, making just $1.75 million in the States, and not much more than that in the rest of the world. A disappointing total then for its still relatively modest $18 million budget. Its tomato meter average is set at 79% from 57 reviews. However, its audience meter is 90% from over 50,000 reviews, which just goes to show that people did love it, but not enough to go and scoff popcorn in the dark room in 1995. The game of City of Lost Children was released in 1996 on the PlayStation and MS-DOS in its native France, with the translated versions following for the rest of the world in 1997. Psygnosis began programming the video game in 1994 using a set location visit to study the movie's environments and get an idea of what scenes to use in their adventure title. They modelled the city using a combination of 3D Studio, Deluxe Paint and Photoshop. The process apparently took a huge month per location to render each scene because mid-90s tech was as slow as all hell. For the most part it works. It has that movie's terrific Gallic dystopian aesthetic and atmosphere, but unfortunately most of the character graphics aren't up to scratch. Miette, who you control throughout the game, is the exception to this rule, with memory and time clearly taken to craft her in finer detail. A good thing really, given that fact obviously you'll be staring at her for the duration of the playthrough. City of Lost Children was clearly influenced by the alone-in-the-dark action-adventure titles, with Resident Evil-style tank controls used to steer your precocious Nipper as she sets out on her quest, initially as an exploited child thief and then as a societal saviour. The pre-rendered maps are relatively cramped, and despite initially looking quite daunting when you start the game, the starkly vivid yet somberly coloured environments can be learned very quickly. Not that you'll be spending a lot of time in these sparsely populated streets. The game itself can be finished pretty quickly as it's very compact, not only in its play area but in its length. The puzzles are where the game's true challenge lies, but not really, for good reasons. There's items scattered throughout, but they're not displayed in the pre-rendered world. They appear in box outs when you stand in a particular area and face in a particular way. This forces you to nudge your tearaway preteen until she catches sight of the object again that she just saw very briefly appear in her vision. Similarly, you have to use the same janky precise positioning to utilise the equipment in the correct area. Fortunately, there's very little in the way of game fail states, other than getting caught by Miet's tormentors. If you get caught 3 times, then you end up being hurled into a punishment basement. You can get out the first couple of times, but after that, you'll be trapped forever. Children trapped in a basement? Something about Joseph Fritzl can be inserted there, if you like. The big downside of this is, despite this being the only fail state you can achieve, you're thrown into it from the very beginning. The controls aren't very responsive, and you'll be wrestling with simply just opening the door you need to get out, due to the game's requirement for precise positioning. If you fail to escape the room in less than 30 seconds, then you will be thrown into the basement and lose one of your, well, I guess you could call them lives. Not a particularly great start to the game, thanks to those dodgy controls. Anytime you try and use anything in the wrong area, Miet will say a number of over-repeated phrases of frustration as you wrestle with the controls, like she's throwing a tantrum or something, and probably you will be on the other side of the screen. The game also requires you to do things in a very specific order. Some characters will not allow you access to key items unless you've talked to another character first, say, and some areas are sealed off. It would be nicer if you could collect all the parts you needed in advance, but I guess in a way it streamlines the game, because the game's puzzles can be a little bit, let's say, esoteric. This is definitely a tradition in early games of this type. Even the best point-and-click adventures like Monkey Island sometimes were a little bit nonsensical with their solutions. How do you access this electrified cabinet, for instance? Well, it's quite simple. You turn on the light, and then the brush that you found in a nearby alleyway alcove can be put on the cash register on the other side of the room, which then turns off the electricity. Right, okay. Looking at these sort of games now, it's very easy to criticise them with modern eyes, but the original Resident Evil, as clunky as it feels, in its first form came out the same year, and well, it definitely had a better grasp of user-friendly control and object interaction. I mean, that circular amulet probably goes in the circular amulet-shaped dent in Resident Evil, as opposed to randomly putting a brush on a cash register to stop electricity going through an office cupboard. With all these criticisms said, it's not an irredeemably bad game. It's got a bucket load of weird atmosphere comparable to that of the otherworldly eeriness found in the classic Ecstatica, one of my favourites, and it's got a unique Gallic charm about it. I don't hate City of Lost Children because I was expecting most of its egregious issues, because, well, most games of this type in this genre at this time were like this. It's sort of priced in. CVG criticised the City of Lost Children for Miet's sluggish speed and the shortness of the adventure in their April 1997 issue. GamePro magazine said that those who have seen the movie will no doubt enjoy the City of Lost Children more than other gamers, but they reckoned even those players may find the play too tough. They gave it a 60% in their April 1997 edition. Finally, IGN said that the game seems illogical. It's never clear what you're supposed to do next, and you'll find yourself stuck with no clue more often than not. Even if you've seen the movie, you may find yourself bewildered and confused. Well, that's the review done, and I managed to get through the whole of it without making a single Maddie joke. You know, City of Lost Children. Pre-deluge, eh? Yeah, wasn't worth it, was it? Anyway, like, subscribe, and I'll try and develop into a grown-up myself soon. Okay, thanks, bye.